You're watching Bookmark, the 30-minute bookshelf, a series from Between Thoughts.
Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into a book that, well, it really flipped the script on conventional wisdom about happiness. It's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a counterintuitive approach to living a good life by Mark Manson. Manson just has this incredible way of cutting through the noise, offering a perspective that's both raw and incredibly insightful. Our mission today is really to extract those key nuggets of knowledge and insight from his work, give you a shortcut to being well-informed, and maybe, hopefully, provide a few aha moments along the way.
Yeah, what's truly fascinating about Manson's approach, I think, is how he immediately challenges our modern assumptions, about happiness, about success. His core idea, this counterintuitive premise, is basically this. Sure, happiness isn't about constant positivity or chasing endless highs. Instead, it's found in choosing what truly matters to you and, crucially, accepting the inevitable struggles that come with those choices. It's a journey, yeah. It might feel a bit uncomfortable at first, but ultimately it seems to lead towards clarity and calm.
That's a really powerful starting point. It kind of forces you to rethink almost everything, doesn't it? So let's begin with idea one. Don't try. Now, Manson opens the book with the story of Charles Bukowski, a writer who, by all accounts, was a true outlier, alcoholic, womanizer, gambler, rejected for decades. He finally found success at 50, famously writing back to an editor, "I have one of two choices, stay in the post office and go crazy, or stay out here and play at writer and starve. I have decided to starve." He signed the contract, wrote his first novel in 3 weeks, and went on to sell millions. Sounds like persistence, right? But then on Bukowski's tombstone, it just reads, "Don't try." Okay, let's unpack this. How does don't try lead to success or a good life when our culture tells us the exact opposite?
Well, Manson argues that Bukowski's success wasn't about trying harder to be something he wasn't, like a winner. It was about authentically being himself, even if that self was, in his own eyes sometimes, a loser. And writing honestly about that reality. He didn't try to be anything other than what he was. And this directly challenges our societal obsession, this constant push for unrealistic positive expectations, be happier, healthier, richer, smarter, just perfect. This constant cultural pressure to give a fuck about everything, whether it's a new TV or getting the perfect selfie. It actually works against our mental well-being. It attaches us to the superficial.
That makes me think, if you're always striving for something more, are you sort of inadvertently reinforcing the idea that you lack it right now?
Precisely. Exactly. And this leads directly to what Manson calls the feedback loop from hell. Think about it. You get anxious about something. Then you start feeling anxious about being anxious. Or you feel angry, then you get angry at yourself for being angry. Our society often tells us, implicitly or explicitly, that having these negative experiences, anxiety, fear, guilt, is somehow not okay. And social media, well, it definitely doesn't help, with everyone seemingly having a grand old time, right? So we end up feeling bad about feeling bad, which creates this awful, never-ending loop of self-criticism, even self-hatred.
So not giving a fuck isn't about apathy then. It's more about maybe short-circuiting that internal judgment, like saying, okay, I feel like crap right now, but who gives a fuck about feeling like crap? Is that kind of it?
That's a huge part of it, yeah. It leads straight into what Manson calls the backwards law, a concept Alan Watts also talked about. The desire for more positive experience is itself a negative experience. Think about that. And paradoxically, the acceptance of one's negative experience is itself a positive experience. It's like Manson's LSD hallucination example he gives. The more he tried to walk towards this house, the farther away it seemed to get. Relentlessly pursuing positive feelings often just makes us less satisfied because it constantly highlights what we think we lack. Conversely, accepting the negative stuff the pain you embrace when you work out, the failures in starting a business, being open about your insecurities paradoxically, that generates positive outcomes. Health, understanding, confidence. Manson suggests our crisis today isn't really material, it's existential. We have so much stuff, so many options. We're overwhelmed and just don't know what to genuinely care about anymore. So the key then is giving a fuck about less, focusing on what is true, immediate, and genuinely important to you.
Wow. That's a powerful reframing, truly. And if you're enjoying this conversation so far, maybe finding some clarity or calm in these ideas, consider subscribing and liking the podcast. It really helps us keep bringing you more thoughtful content like this. Okay, so that liberating idea of the backwards law, accepting the negative, it kind of leads into another really challenging idea Manson presents. This one, you are not special. Oof. That can be a tough pill to swallow for a lot of us, I think. Manson introduces this character he calls Jimmy. Jimmy is like all positivity all the time. Delusional self-confidence, constantly name-dropping, always talking about his brilliant business ideas. But Manson reveals Jimmy is actually a total deadbeat. He lives off family, girlfriends, doesn't really do anything substantial. He believes he's amazing, and anyone who sees through him is just, jealous.
Yeah.
So what's Manson getting at here? How does teaching everyone they're exceptional maybe lead to more Jimmys rather than, say, Bill Gates's?
Yeah, this idea is a direct hit on the excesses of the self-esteem movement, which often measured self-esteem simply by how positively people felt about themselves. But true self-worth, Manson argues, is actually shown in how you feel about your negative aspects. Can you accept them? Jimmy's bulletproof delusion, his inability to see his flaws, isn't strength, it's profound weakness. He's entitled. He thinks he deserves good things without earning them. And this entitlement, Manson says, makes people excessively self-focused. They're constantly trying to convince themselves their shit doesn't stink, even when, they're standing knee-deep in their own mess. He even shares his own experiences from adolescence, dealing with trauma like expulsion, his parents' divorce, how it led to his own entitlement issues in relationships, always needing validation, feeling like the world owed him something.
Okay, so it's not just about thinking you're superior then. It can also be about constantly feeling like a victim. Are they sort of two sides of the same entitlement coin? What does that look like?
Exactly. They are two sides of the same coin. Both extremes are fundamentally selfish. Believing I'm awesome, you all suck, so I deserve special treatment. That's obvious entitlement. But so is the flip side. I suck, you're all awesome, therefore I deserve special treatment. Feeling uniquely victimized. Both involve a refusal to take responsibility for your own feelings and problems. The crucial realization, the liberating one, is that most of our problems, they're not unique. Billions of people have faced similar things. Recognizing you're not special in your suffering is actually the first step towards solving your problems. It connects you to others. Yeah. But we live under what Manson calls the tyranny of exceptionalism. Mass media constantly bombards us with the extremes, the billionaires, the prodigies, the catastrophes. It makes ordinary, average life feel inadequate, like a failure. And this drives insecurity, more entitlement, sometimes addiction, as we desperately try to feel special or escape the feeling of being average. The real liberation, paradoxically, comes from accepting mediocrity. Not in a bad way, but just accepting the ordinary. Manson suggests the knowledge and acceptance of your own mundane existence will actually free you to accomplish what you truly wish to accomplish without judgment or lofty expectations. It's about appreciating the simple, ordinary things that actually matter. Relationships, learning, helping others, because those are often what's most real.
That's profound. It really shifts the focus from trying to be something extraordinary to just being and finding value in that. Okay, this leads us nicely into idea 3, the value of suffering, which, again, is a tough one. Who wants to value suffering? Manson shares this incredible, almost unbelievable story of a Japanese Imperial Army officer, Hiru Onoda. He kept fighting a phantom war in the Philippine jungle for nearly 30 years after World War II had actually ended. He ignored leaflets, family letters, even a message from the emperor, believing they were all just enemy tricks. He lived off insects, rodents, sadly even murdered civilians, all for loyalty to an empire that didn't exist in that form anymore. He chose that suffering for decades. So, if suffering is inevitable, like Manson says, what's the constructive way to engage with it? How can pain possibly lead to a better life?
Well, what's fascinating here is Manson's argument that suffering isn't just inevitable, it's biologically useful. It's necessary. He imagines this funny but kind of brutal superhero called Disappointment Panda, whose superpower is just telling people harsh, necessary truths they don't want to hear. Pain, and all its forms, physical pain, emotional pain, is nature's preferred agent for inspiring change. It's a feedback mechanism. It tells us something is wrong. You stub your toe, it teaches you where the furniture is. Right. Emotional pain from rejection or failure, it teaches you maybe to avoid similar mistakes or to change your approach. If we constantly try to shield ourselves from all discomfort, we lose these vital lessons. We become fragile, disconnected from reality. And problems, they never truly end. They just evolve. They hopefully improve. Warren Buffett has money problems, right? Just very different, perhaps better problems than someone struggling to pay rent. So happiness then comes from solving problems, not from magically having no problems at all. Denial, or constantly playing the victim, those things prevent problem solving. They keep you stuck. Emotions are really just signposts. They're feedback. Negative emotions are a call to action. Positive emotions are rewards for taking the right action. We should question our emotions, not just blindly obey them.
So the key isn't to avoid pain necessarily, but to be really mindful about what you're willing to suffer for. Is that it?
Exactly. That's the absolute core of choose your struggle. Manson illustrates this really well with his own story, his unfulfilled dream of being a rock star. He loved the idea of it, the result, picturing himself on stage, the adoration, all that. But he realized he wasn't actually in love with the process, the relentless practice, the tedious logistics, dealing with broken strings, hauling heavy gear night after night. He didn't enjoy that struggle, and that revealed something crucial. Who you are is defined by what you're willing to struggle for. What pain are you willing to sustain? People who genuinely enjoy the struggles of the gym, the soreness, the discipline, they become fit, may be triathletes. Those who find fulfillment in the stresses and uncertainty of the starving artist life, they become artists. It's not just about willpower, it's about finding a kind of joy, or at least meaning, in the climb itself. And this is backed up, interestingly, by studies like Kazimierz Dabrowski's work on WWII survivors. Despite experiencing horrific trauma, many reported becoming stronger, more resilient, even more grateful afterwards. Their pain, although terrifying, led to profound psychological growth. Emotional pain, dealt with constructively, is a necessary component of developing a stronger sense of self and ultimately a happier life.
That makes so much sense. That our proudest achievements, the things that define us, often emerge directly from facing our greatest adversities. Okay, this leads us right into idea 4. You are always choosing the power of responsibility. Manson uses this great analogy of running a marathon. It's the same 26.2 miles, the same physical pain, right? But when you choose to run it, train for it, it's this glorious personal milestone. If it were somehow forced upon you against your will, it would be terrifying, a punishment. So this raises a huge question. If we always have a choice, even in how we respond to suffering, what does that mean for everyday lives? Especially when things feel completely out of our control.
It means, fundamentally, that we as individuals are responsible for everything in our lives. Now, that doesn't mean everything is our fault. Big difference. We don't always control what happens to us, the external circumstances. But we always control how we interpret those events and how we choose to respond. Even choosing not to choose, being passive, that's still a choice. It's choosing inaction. William James, often called the father of American psychology, he conducted this fascinating personal experiment. After years of battling health issues, depression, failures, he decided to believe, just for 1 year, that he was 100% responsible for everything that happened in his life, including his reactions. And this radical shift in perspective, taking total ownership, led to what he called his rebirth. It fundamentally changed him and set him on the path to becoming hugely influential. So it's crucial to distinguish between responsibility, which is about the present tense, the choices you're making right now, and fault, which is about the past tense, things that have already happened, maybe choices someone else made. You can be responsible for dealing with a situation that absolutely isn't your fault. Like if you get robbed, it's not your fault, but you're responsible for how you react, how you move forward. Or think about Malala Yousafzai being shot by the Taliban, absolutely not her fault, but she took responsibility for her response, turning it into global advocacy.
Right. Yeah, that's a really crucial distinction. It's incredibly empowering, actually. Even in the absolute worst situations, you still own your response.
Precisely. It's where your power lies. However, our modern culture sometimes seems to embrace what Manson calls victimhood chic. Social media in particular can sometimes encourage people to constantly push responsibility onto others, to feel perpetually victimized by something or someone. And look, feeling victimized sometimes is valid, but making it an identity, it gives this temporary high, maybe a sense of moral righteousness. Ryan Holiday calls it outrage porn. But it often distracts from solving the actual problems, polarizes people, and honestly, it sucks attention away from people facing truly horrific victimization. Instead, Manson advocates for what he calls the do something principle, which is basically action isn't just the effect of motivation, it can also be the cause. You don't just sit around waiting to feel inspired or motivated. You act. You do something, anything related to your problem or goal. And that action itself creates the inspiration and motivation to keep going. Like the novelist example he gives, who committed to writing just 200 crappy words per day. Often, the simple act of starting, even badly, would then inspire thousands more words. Action first.
So you don't need to wait to feel motivated to start. You just start, do something small, and the motivation kind of catches up. Yeah, that's incredibly liberating, especially for anyone facing like creative blocks or procrastination. But then on the flip side of taking action, Manson talks about how certainty can actually be the enemy of growth. How does that connect to responsibility and choice? And why should we maybe trust ourselves less? That sounds risky.
It's tightly linked, yeah. It seems risky, but it's about intellectual humility. We are always, Manson says, in the process of approaching truth and perfection without ever actually reaching it. So the goal shouldn't be to be right all the time, but maybe to be less wrong over time. Our brains are amazing meaning machines, constantly creating connections and stories to make sense of the world. But they're imperfect. They're biased towards what we already believe. He mentions the story of Meredith Marin, who, through therapy, developed detailed false memories of childhood abuse. It illustrates how easily our minds can construct a reality that fits our existing beliefs or emotional needs, even if it's factually untrue. So, Manson argues that rigorously questioning our own intentions, our motivations, admitting that our beliefs and assumptions might be wrong, is actually the logical route to progress and growth. Chasing certainty, needing to be right, often just breeds more insecurity. You have to constantly defend your position. He shares this disturbing anecdote about a woman named Erin who stalked him for years, completely convinced they were somehow destined to cure death together. Her unwavering certainty in her own righteousness, despite her clearly harmful actions, highlights how certainty can breed insecurity and entitlement. I'm right, so I can do whatever I want. Uncertainty, on the other hand, being willing to admit I don't know, or I might be wrong, removes judgment of others and ourselves. It opens the door to learning. It's the root of all real progress and growth. This leads to Manson's law of avoidance. We tend to avoid situations that threaten our cherished self-identity, the story we tell ourselves about who we are, like his example of the friend who dreamed of being an artist but never actually put their work out there. Why? Because, as Manson puts it, being an artist nobody likes was far scarier than remaining an artist nobody's heard of. It protected the idea of being an artist.
Wow. Okay, so we cling to these comfortable identities, these perceived certainties about ourselves, even if they actually hold us back from living fully.
Precisely. We protect the ego. To overcome this, Manson provocatively suggests we need to kill yourself. Not literally, obviously, but kill the arbitrarily constructed ego, the rigid identity you've built. Define yourself in the simplest, most ordinary ways possible. Let go of the grandiose ideas, the entitlement, the emotional highs you've maybe relied on, and constantly question yourself. What if I'm wrong about this? What would it mean if I were wrong? Would being wrong create a better problem or a worse problem than believing I'm right? This kind of rigorous self-questioning. Yeah, it's painful, but it's necessary, he argues, to dismantle flawed values and actually embrace growth.
That is a truly profound challenge, asking us to really confront our deepest assumptions about who we think we are. And this brings us, quite naturally, to idea 5, the importance of saying no, which leads, paradoxically, to freedom through commitment. Manson shares his own experience here, right? Being a digital nomad, traveling to like 55 countries, having ultimate freedom, only to find that absolute freedom by itself means nothing. It felt empty. So what does this mean for us? How does rejecting alternatives, saying no to things, actually make our lives better when we're constantly bombarded with the message that more is always better?
Yeah, it's another counterintuitive one. Manson realized that true meaning and a sense of importance often come through a rejection of alternatives, a narrowing of freedom in a sense. It comes through choosing to commit to one place and maybe one belief system, one person, one career path. He contrasts this with his experience in Russia, where he found this incredibly blunt honesty in communication. It was jarring at first compared to, superficial Western niceties, but that directness, the ability to say no clearly and to hear no without it being a catastrophe, actually fostered a deep sense of trust. Rejection, he concludes, both giving and receiving it, is an important and crucial life skill.
That's really interesting. So honesty, even if it feels harsh sometimes, can actually build much stronger, more trustworthy connections. How does that play out in, say, romantic relationships?
Absolutely. He argues that rejection and clear boundaries are vital for healthy relationships. He contrasts this with the kind of passionate, all-consuming, but ultimately destructive love we see in, say, Romeo and Juliet, where people try to escape their own problems through each other rather than supporting each other and facing them. Healthy love, Manson suggests, is based on two individuals acknowledging and addressing their own problems with mutual support, not trying to save each other or lose themselves in each other. Toxic relationships often fall into this victim and saver dynamic. One person constantly blames others or circumstances the victim. The other constantly takes on too much responsibility, trying to fix everything, the saver. Both roles, he argues, are ultimately selfish and rooted in entitlement. They fail to meet each other's genuine needs because they're focused on their own role-playing. True love, healthy love, is voluntary. It's chosen freely without manipulation or coercion. And conflict, believe it or not, is actually necessary for trust. Think about it. No one trusts a yes man. You need to know someone is willing to say no, to disagree, to uphold their own values before you can truly trust their yes. And when trust is broken, it can only be rebuilt, he says, if the trust breaker genuinely admits the flawed values that caused the breach in the first place, and then demonstrates through consistent action over time that they've changed. It requires building a new track record.
That makes a lot of sense. It really highlights the importance of authenticity and boundaries, even when it's difficult. And how does this connect back to that more is better idea, the paradox of choice?
It directly challenges it. Psychologists talk about the paradox of choice. When we're overloaded with options, we actually tend to become less satisfied with whatever we eventually choose. Why? Because we're constantly aware of all the other options we forfeited. FOMO, fear of missing out, kicks in. This often leads people to avoid commitment altogether. Keeping options open feels safer, freer. Manson argues that while breadth of experience is valuable, especially when you're young and figuring things out, true depth comes from commitment, as he puts it. Depth is where the gold is buried. When you truly commit to one person, one place, one skill, one long-term project, you gain a richness and depth of experience that's simply unavailable if you're constantly skimming the surface of infinite options. This is freedom through commitment. By rejecting unimportant distractions, by saying no to things that don't align with your chosen values, you actually hone your focus. It simplifies decision-making, it removes that constant fear of missing out, and it allows for deeper, more meaningful experiences and often greater long-term success and satisfaction.
Wow. That's truly counterintuitive, isn't it? That by limiting your options, by committing, you actually gain more freedom and depth. Amazing. This brings us to the final and perhaps most profound idea, idea 6. And then you die. Manson shares a very personal story here about his friend Josh, who died tragically in an accident when they were both just 19. He says this event became the clearest before-after point in his life. It transformed him from being kind of inhibited and directionless to being more responsible, more hardworking. How can something so terrifying, so final death, be the very thing that gives our lives meaning? That seems like the ultimate paradox.
It does, doesn't it? But death, Manson argues, drawing heavily on the work of Ernest Becker, is the ultimate compass for meaning. Becker won a Pulitzer for his book, The Denial of Death. Becker made 2 really key points. First, humans are pretty unique in our ability to conceptualize our own future non-existence, our own death. And this awareness creates a deep underlying anxiety he called death terror. Second, to cope with this terror, we humans create what Becker called immortality projects. These are essentially our attempts to make our conceptual selves, our identity, our legacy live on forever, even though our physical bodies won't. These projects are our values made manifest.
So in a way, everything we value, everything we strive for, is fundamentally one of these immortality projects.
Yeah.
Trying to leave a mark.
In Becker's view, yes, largely. Think about it. Having children, writing books, building companies, getting your name on a building, achieving fame, even just strongly identifying with a nation or a cause, these can all be seen as attempts to transcend physical death, to achieve symbolic immortality. And when these projects feel threatened, or when they fail, that underlying death terror can creep back in. Becker's rather bitter antidote wasn't to find better immortality projects, but actually to become comfortable with the idea of death itself. By confronting our own mortality, by accepting it, we can actually free ourselves to choose our values more authentically, unrestrained by this often unconscious, illogical quest for immortality. Manson describes doing this himself, standing at the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, intentionally confronting the vastness, the edge of oblivion, and feeling paradoxically alive. Very alive. Death, he says, has a way of clarifying things. It obliterates all the crappy, fragile, superficial values in life. It cuts through the bullshit. It forces us to ask the really important questions. What is your legacy? Not in terms of fame, but impact. How will the world be different and better when you're gone? What values will you have lived by?
That really puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? It shifts the focus from trivial day-to-day worries to the bigger picture. What you leave behind, yes, but also what you choose to value right now, knowing your time is limited.
Exactly. And this ties everything back together. Happiness, Manson concludes, ultimately comes from caring about something greater than yourself, believing that you are a contributing component in some much larger entity. Entitlement, that focus on me, strips us away. It isolates us. Our culture often confuses getting great attention with achieving great success or living a great life. They're not the same thing. But Manson's ultimate message, after all the harsh truths, is actually incredibly affirming. He says, you are great already, whether you realize it or not, whether anybody else realizes it or not. Why? Because in the face of endless confusion and certain death, you continue to choose what to give a fuck about and what not to. That act of choosing values in itself is profound. He ends with that powerful quote from Bukowski, kind of like his epitaph. We're all gonna die, all of us, what a circus. That alone should make us love each other, but it doesn't. We are terrorized and flattened by life's trivialities. We are eaten up by nothing. It's really embracing the reality of death, Manson suggests, that we truly begin to live and to value what genuinely matters.
What a profound and, yeah, definitely thought-provoking journey we've taken through Mark Manson's core ideas today. We've touched on so much. Embracing that counterintuitive path of don't try, finding liberation in accepting you are not special, understanding the transformative power of choosing our suffering, the immense freedom that comes from taking responsibility for our choices, even our interpretations, and that paradoxical strength found in commitment and saying no, and ultimately how confronting our own mortality, that final truth, can actually be the compass that guides us toward living a truly meaningful life by forcing us to focus on what transcends our own individual existence.
It really is tied together nicely, doesn't it? And it leaves us with perhaps a final provocative thought to consider. This raises an important question. How might consciously choosing what you value, what you really give a fuck about, and actively letting go of what doesn't serve those values, how might that truly change the way you experience life's inevitable challenges, and perhaps even shift your perception of your own mortality?
Indeed. Something powerful to reflect on. We really encourage you, listening, to think about your own chosen struggles, your own core values, what truly matters enough for you to give a fuck about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the subtle art of not giving a feck. We genuinely hope this conversation brings you both clarity and calm in your own journey. You've been listening to Bookmark, 30-minute bookshelf, a Between Thoughts production.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through today's book. This was Bookmark, your 30-minute bookshelf summary, brought to you by Between Thoughts. We hope it brought you clarity, calm, and a little spark of inspiration. New episodes drop regularly, so stay tuned, stay curious, and keep turning the pages one thought at a time. Until next time, take care and keep growing.